I bet you didn't know the man behind Barney, the big purple dinosaur we all grew up on, was a black man. Of course, with this, it came its own set of challenges and obstacles he would have to overcome, including racism from some staff members on set and from white viewers. David Joyner portrayed the body of Barney from 1991 to 2001, and he spoke with Hype Plus to talk about the ups and downs of his experience as the physical embodiment of the iconic character, as well as a new career as a spiritual healer who specializes in tantric practices, which threatened Joyner's reputation as a child-friendly idol. Here's David Joyner's story as the first Barney. All right, y'all. So it's always a pleasure when we bring, I would say, people that have done it, that have put in that time, that work. And this is no different, if not even more special. A lot of you guys, a lot of my 30, 35 year olds, and maybe even 40-year olds, we're gonna hit you in the heart with this one. The one and only Mr. David Joyner, aka known as, I would say, the original voice of Barney.
I'm fantastic, but I'm not the voice. I'm the body.
Oh,
Let me tell you how that works.
yes, man.
Real quick. There's a guy who does the voice who's sitting in the sound booth, and he's doing the voice at the same time that I was in the costume, moving the mouth, doing the mannerisms, the gestures, and the acting. Now, to move Barney's mouth, there was a bar connected to the bottom jaw, padded with a sponge. And the sponge, I would duct tape the sponge on the outside, and I would bite on the inside, grip the sponge, and nod my head. So every syllable was a nod. So imagine you're doing this all day as you're acting and doing gestures and mannerisms, dancing, jumping, doing 360s. Now, the crazy thing about this, when I was about 7 years old, I wanted to be on television so bad, I would stand in front of the TV and lip sync and entertain my family and friends of whatever was going on television. And growing up, it became like this party gag. I'd walk into a room, they'd say, Dave, do your thing. Study someone's mannerisms. I listen to them speak, and I'd say, okay, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to become you while you're talking. God was training me for this when I was a kid.
Mm. You just opened it up with a lot to kind of digest. The idea of it in my mind, I was always thinking that whoever was in the costume was the voice, and you just broke it down, the TV magic that comes with that. But then on top of that, I'm sure it was also a surprise of like who was in the costume. And then I kind of want to get into that. I want to kind of open up about that. So with you even saying the idea of that you were just a body, did it ever come to a point where you could be the voice? Did you just say cool? How did that work? Did that ever become a conversation for you?
Well, not really, because as you're, like I say, when I'm in the costume moving the mouth, I'm biting on a bar, padded with the sponge. So my mouth is something. Now, there were occasions where we would do hospital visits and the voice would be standing behind the costume so the kids couldn't see me. Um, if for some reason he's not available or something, if I had to do the voice, I would try, but my imitation is not as good as his voice.
I love it.
I love you.
Yeah.
You love me.
So how do we even get to this point? Where were you in your career? Were you trying to be an actor? Were you a person? Were you doing stunt double work or being a stunt? Yeah, like how do we end up becoming the body of Barney?
I grew up loving acting, performing, entertaining, but I grew up in a small town, Decatur, Illinois. So there wasn't a lot of avenues. And I wasn't a big theater person. I did a play I remember in elementary school. Uh, but I also loved electronics and I love fixing things and seeing how things work. I was also very athletic, sports. I played the drums. So all of that kind of culminated to me being Barney. And so I told my parents, I don't want to waste your money on a 4 year school because I plan on getting into entertainment. I want to go to a tech school, get a degree, associate degree, something, start working for a good company, work at least 5 years, and then quit to pursue entertainment full time. Now, the other thing about me is I'm very spiritual. whenever I come up with something or an idea, I always try to pray and meditate on it and line it up with my spirit. And if my spirit feels good about it, I know it's on. So I went to ITT Tech for electronic engineering technology. Actually graduated before my class, graduated with honors, started working for a company there in Indianapolis. And then Texas Instruments had come and recruited like 20% of my class members. And at a period of time where that job in Indianapolis wasn't working out, um, Texas Instrument also, I had a call with them to see if I could, get hired on there. And it's funny because during the phone interview and the personal interview, they asked, "What's your long term goal?" I said, "Well, a little young 21-year-old, I want to work for at least 5 years and then quit to pursue entertainment full time." So, they laughed at me. So when I did the personal interview, standing there in front of a group of supervisors, and I said the same thing and they laughed. Well, as I was working there, I was also performing. And even when I was in school at ITT Tech, I was modeling. Uh, I was doing runway shows. I was singing. I was dancing, performing wherever I could. I used to stand in store windows as a live mannequin. And instead of just standing there frozen, I would move mechanically and entertain people as they would come and watch. And sometimes people would literally, when I was in Dallas, people would literally bring their kids to the mall, set them on the floor, and go shop. And I would just be in the window. And what I would do is like a 4 hour show. And every hour I changed to a different outfit. And sometimes people would actually come in there and try to get the outfit that I just got out of. I'm in the window sweating. They're like, no, they want to buy that one. I'm like, all right, cool. And so when the fifth year came around with Texas Instruments, I wasn't ready because I had been partying too much, didn't save up enough money, just doing my crazy things, like college kids do. And then you finally get a job. And then next thing you know, it's like, hey, I'm making a lot of money, so I can do all this other stuff. And so the sixth year came around. I said, you know what? This is the year. So I buckled down. And then I started taking some acting workshops and classes at Dallas. Well, the guy who ran the workshop, his wife also ran an acting school for kids. On the weekends, we would do improv comedy together, the adults with the kids at this mall. And they would also have what they called Hollywood Showcase, where they would fly in casting directors and agents from Los Angeles to Dallas. The kids would go through a 2 day seminar, commercials, comedy, drama, improv. So at one point, they needed someone to help these kids get ready for this workshop. Now, I was telling people at Texas Instruments at the time, this was around April 1990, that I was going to quit. This is it. I'm going to do my thing. And they're like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. How are you going to make it? I just know I'm going to make it. So they were about to have they were about to have a layoff, crazy. And they were trying to get people to take a severance package to be a part of this layoff. I go to my supervisor. I said, hey, can you make me a part of this severance package? And he says, no, I can't. So I go to my desk, I pray, I pick up my calendar, I open up the calendar where you can see all 12 months. I close my eyes and I went, bam, September, September 28th. That's my last day. So from April to September, now I'm prepping, getting ready, aligning that with my spirit. So this workshop happens in May. This casting director, Lee Abrams, rest in peace, rest in peace. He came to see these kids perform. She was a local casting director in Dallas, and she saw me working with these kids, and she saw how I connected with the kids. Because my thing is always, I always know kids are on a different frequency as adults, and I even know as I was growing up as a kid, I felt more spiritually aligned than I felt even when I became an adult. But I always knew kids were more spiritually connected, so I always wanted to try to connect with kids on a spiritual level. And so she saw how I was working with these kids, and she asked me to audition for Barney. I had never done any costume character work before, nor did I plan on doing any costume character work. My thing was, I'm going to act, I'm going to perform, I'm going to be me. So she says, I'm going to give you these videotapes. I want you to study the videos. Because Barney had already done like 8 home videos. And the guy who was originally the Barney body had left and gone to the army. And they were looking for somebody to do 2 more home videos. So she sends me the videos. Every time I pop in a video to try to watch it, I'd fall asleep. And I'm like, okay, I don't get this character. It's kind of slow. It's boring. I'm not into children's television. What am I going to do? I don't want to let her down. So the night before the audition, um, I watch. I'm watching a video and I fall asleep. Right now, what a lot of people don't know is I'm a huge Prince fan. Huge. When I listen to Prince sometimes at night, I go on this spiritual journey. So that night, as I couldn't watch the video because I kept falling asleep, as I went to bed, I had Prince on in the background. I had this dream, right? And it was crazy. I don't know if it had to do with purple or whatever, but I had this dream and Barney was in my dream. Barney passed out. So I have to run to Barney and I'm giving Barney mouth to mouth resuscitation to revive him, right? So the next morning, I'm freaking out over this dream. Like, what was that about? What was that about? What Prince got in my spirit? What was that? I don't know. So I'm driving to the audition. I know this is a long answer. I'm driving to the audition and I'm sitting at a stoplight and the spirit says, look up. I look up and there's this billboard that says, breathe life into your vacation, Southwest Airlines. I get to the parking lot and I go to turn off my car and my spiritual number is 22. Whenever I see a 22, I always stop and give thanks and give praise. When I see a 222, as I'm giving thanks and praise, I also know something very significant is about to happen. So I'm sitting there, I go to turn off my car, it's 1222, stop and do my prayer, my meditation. I look up, same advertisement, different billboard, breathe life into your vacation, Southwest Airlines. As I'm walking across the parking lot, it hits me. Barney passed out in your dream because the energy of the character didn't keep you awake. If you go into this audition, you breathe life into this character, you're going on vacation. And that has been my premise, my goal ever since I started doing Barney.
No, just I have to also acknowledge though, around that era, what era are we talking about? Early 90s when this was going down?
Yeah. I actually auditioned in 1990 and we started shooting the first video in 1991. And I did the show from 91 until 2001 after 2 years. And then that's when I moved to Los Angeles.
So my question or my thought more so that I can't ignore, and I'm sure that people can't ignore, is like this is a black man behind this costume, and that we're dealing with, white children. Was there any conversation, or how did you process that? Did anyone make you feel any type of way? Did they try to keep it hidden? Like, I'm just, for whatever reason, that stands out to me because you're talking to white American children or
Exactly. You're talking about white America. You're talking about a children's character. At that time, we had no idea it was going to become like the icon that it is. Um, and it's in Texas. Well, Texas, Texas. Um, there's a lot of racism in Texas. Not a lot in Dallas, but some of the other cities. I was never really a part of it, meaning I'm a firm believer of the energy that you radiate is the energy that you're going to attract. Now, although I did butt heads with some people in the cast, some people in the crew, um, they actually had to take a tolerance class. There was this supervisor, uh, security guard. Every time I come into the studio, he'd say, "Good morning, boy." And so I'm like, ah, man. So after a while, I'm like, hey, man, you can't keep calling me boy. I said, my own father does not call me boy. So I can call you what I want to. And we were good friends. But after a while, I'm like, no. So because of that and some other things that had transpired, everybody had to take a tolerance class. And some people felt angry about it. Some people didn't. Some people were cool about it. But they understood that I'm not going to deal with it. And then uh, in 94, I get a call. No, I'm sorry, 93. No, it could have been 94. I get a call from my hometown news reporter because growing up, I was in the paper a lot for sports and everything. And so we had a good relationship. And he calls me up and he says, hey, mind if I can get a comment on this article that just came out? And I'm like, what article are you talking about? He says, well, it's in the Esquire magazine. And it talks about how the Klan found out the guy inside of Barney's black and they banned their children from watching Barney. And he says, "Can you respond to that?" I said, "Well, I have no idea what you're talking about." So he says, "Go get the article and give me a call back." So I go get the magazine and I'm reading it and I just started laughing. And so when I called him back and I gave him my answer, he says, "Well, how did you feel?" I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I started laughing when I read it." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean you started laughing?" I said, "Well, number one, it's the Klan. Number two, the Klan represents hate. Barney represents love. Anything that's of love is not going to resonate with someone that's operating in hate. And the fact that I'm a black man in this purple costume trying to spread love around the world. So, number one, they're not going to like the love. And number two, they're going to hate the fact there's a black man inside. So, there's really nothing I can do about it. So, I just laughed because I thought it was kind of funny. Because all because of a purple dinosaur that their kids have fallen in love with, they're like, "Oh no, you can't watch that no more because that's Barney, and Barney's a black man." So the other thing that happened is I found out that a lot of talk shows wanted to interview me personally without being Barney. And one of the things that we had also talked about, and even when I signed my contract, is the anonymity of the character. And it's all about the character and not the actual actors, because we wanted to keep the persona of the character as a living character. Not that there's a person that does the voice, not that there's a person who does the body. We wanted kids to think Barney was real, right? And so we're all on board with that. So that wasn't a problem. So when this article came out, and then when I responded about it, they get a call from Essence Magazine. And at the time, I had found out also that some other talk shows that wanted me to come on, and were like, "No, no, you can't. Nope, nope." So then after that article, Essence wanted to interview me, and I remember setting up the interview. We were going to do a performance in New York, and then before I flew back, I was going to go to the Essence office and do the interview before I caught my flight. Go to the Essence. I'm sitting in the conference room, and I'm sitting there going, "Thank you, Mr. Ku Klux Klan man. I'm about to do an interview with Essence Magazine." And growing up as a child, Jet and Essence, that was a thing. So I'm like, I'm about to be in Essence Magazine. I sit there, I do the interview, great interview. I go outside, get a taxi to get to the airport. Zoom, zoom, zoom. I couldn't even get a taxi. I said, back to reality. So I literally had to walk back to the hotel that I was staying at and get in line for the taxi to go to the airport. And I just laughed all the way to the airport. I said, "You just got pulled back down into reality, my brother."
I mean, to say that, because you kind of answered one of the questions that I had in my mind. I'm like, why are we just kind of finding out about this in recent times that this was a black man in the costume? I'm sure you've been out there, but why is it kind of now? But you said that because of it was like contractually, you kind of had to keep it low. Um,
The funny thing is, it didn't just happen now. I mean, it's been known that Barney was a black man for decades.
Mhm.
It's just that a lot of the kids that grew up watching Barney are now adults in their late 20s and 30s, early 30s, mid 30s now. Uh, so when that fact came out, it was like, "Oh, that was the Barney that I watched. Oh, I didn't know Barney was a black man. Now it makes sense. Barney had rhythm. Barney could dance. Barney could jump." And so that actually came out. And I had also done some other interviews. Like in '92, I did an article with People magazine. And I was actually, in the magazine. I'm standing there, a bunch of children lined up behind me. And that article came out, and people knew, but it wasn't like a big thing like it is now. And a lot of it has to do with our culture. A lot of it has to do with uh, Barney represented us when we didn't know Barney was representing us. And so the two children that watched it that are now adults, they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna own that. Barney's a brother. Barney's a black man. Barney's one of us."
Yeah. And that's a great point because, we're very much aware in these days, social media, black ownership, just finding things to be really proud to stand on and to find that jewel of like this person that I grew up to as a kid was someone I could claim as one of us as well. I think that's what's like you explained, that's definitely happening. Far as any other things, were there other things that kind of like became obstacles for you outside of Barney? Did it keep you in like a certain position where you couldn't do other roles? Like, like the typecasting, did that ever occur as well?
It did. It's funny because um, you would think um, a, a casting director seeing an actor who's busy working, you would think, oh, okay, this could be a great person to be on my project. But I come to find out that in Dallas, there's a lot of backwards thinking when it comes to acting and roles. And at a point where we were filming Barney, uh, we would have 5 weeks on and 1 week off. And so there was one production company that I had been working with before doing Barney, and they did a lot of industrials. So I was consistently working with them, even on my breaks. Um, but then I found out that when we were in the studio also for 6 months, and then traveling 6 months. And during that traveling period, there were some weeks and months where I'm sitting at home and I'm thinking, why am I not getting the auditions? I'm calling my agent one day and I'm like, what's going on? I'm not getting auditions. And then I come to find out, it's like, well, you're working. I'm like, yeah. Well, you're working. They don't want to work with you because you're working. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You would think you would have someone on your set that's a veteran that knows what they're doing. And so I don't know if it was a black thing. I don't know if it was just a working thing of what they were telling me. I really don't know, but I just thought it was really strange. And then even when I moved out to Los Angeles, um, the manager that I had at first, she says, "Don't put Barney on your resume." And I
Wow.
said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Because you want people to think that you are a legitimate actor. You don't want people to think that you are a costume character." And the other thing about costumes, people get confused or they try to marry a mascot with a live action character.
Right.
And a lot of times people would tell me is like, "Oh, you're a great mascot." And I'm like, "No, I'm not a mascot." And even when we would do some of the parades, like the Macy's parade, we had to make sure that I was in a separate room from the mascot, because we didn't want people to think that Barney was a mascot. And the difference is a mascot is there to hype up, to entertain, to connect with you on a level of, hey, it's like almost like a parody. It's like a fun activity. Whereas a live action character, as an actor, you're able to try to demonstrate emotion and feelings. Um, you're moving the character to words and you're doing a scene with the character. And one of the most beautiful things that I can contribute with my part as being Barney, number one, connecting on a spiritual level with children. And then number two, growing up as a percussionist, being able to do certain things all at once. So within the Barney costume, it's all one piece. The head doesn't come off, the head doesn't turn. It's all one piece. It's 6'7". I see out of the mouth. When the mouth is open, I have a very narrow peripheral view. When the mouth is closed, I see nothing
Wow.
because of my understanding about energy and movement and the flow of things. And then as an actor, you're trying to emit everything that's going on inside. I would literally walk around my apartment as if I was blind. I would try to feel things, feel energy, to feel the energy of things. Barney, 6'7", 70 pounds. It could get over 120 degrees. So then I had to train my body for heat so that I could be in this costume for hours at a time. When I used to stand in the store windows as a mannequin, I'm standing there like this. Sometimes I would move mechanically. Sometimes I'm just standing. So your mind takes over to whereas your body just becomes numb and your body is locked in. So if my arms are in this position, I'm not putting my arms in this position to then flex the muscle to keep it there. You relax and you just lock the joints. So now your hands can stay there forever if you wanted them to. And if they start getting tired, you just focus on that energy and you keep them there and you try to keep them as still as possible. So then when you needed to move them, you could just move it in a way that it would seem mechanical, right? So because of all of that, the acting, the engineering background. So all this is going on inside the costume. I would walk into a set. I would scan the set to see where everything is. And then I would close my eyes, try to walk up to different things on the set to see exactly how many steps it took to get to things. If I'm about to do a scene and there's a narrow space and I want to jump and do a 360 and I know there's a prop sitting on a table, I know that I cannot knock over that prop. So I can either go in front of the table or I can go above the prop to do the 360. David Joyner is an athlete. David Joyner loves to show off. David Joyner loves to let you know that David Joyner's not in here alone. So instead of going in front of the table, David Joyner's going to say, I'm going to go above that prop and come back down. And so all of that stuff goes on inside. So when I tell people, I'm not a mascot, I'm a performer.
And I appreciate that. Just the insight of like, as soon as we started the interview, just like the insight of how, television of what you're doing as being a performer works. Now, I have to ask this, and then you don't have to answer it, but I do gotta ask to make sure that I'm covering all bases here. Someone like Barney has been on TV for years. It became, a cultural icon. Did the success of Barney also equate to bank account status for you? I don't need the exact numbers, but just given what Barney was, and how did that?
I do get that question asked. Did you get paid? Did they pay you? I signed a very great contract.
Okay,
It wasn't a good contract. It was a great contract.
okay,
Um, because I also understood that I wanted money on the back end.
okay, okay.
So
So
I signed that I didn't get everything up front. So I'm still getting
that's
Barney.
right. I as we spin out of Barney, why did that show come to an end? Do you know why Barney kind of like dissolved? And yeah,
A lot of different dynamics. I left the show in 2001, and even when I left the show, the guy who started doing the body work and then the voice changed also.
mhm.
A lot of people felt that it wasn't the same Barney. They would get letters. Barney doesn't have the same movement, the same rhythm. And
Did
so
it
they
go to a
contacted
white
me again
character?
to do
Was it a
a
white man behind
nationwide
it?
campaign.
Did it? When you said that Barney doesn't have the same movement, did a white man step in? Okay, we can keep it a buck.
and when he stepped in, my opinion was he wasn't the best person for the show
Okay.
because he was doing the stage show. And one of the things that I was trying to help him understand is when you're on stage, you've got all these distractions going on. The kids are sitting in the audience, they have their siblings, they have their parents, they have food, they're eating. You have all these props on the stage, you have
Mm,
different characters on the stage. Um, so they're not really focused on the energy of the character. Everything. It's like a part of the presentation. I
mm.
said, when you're at that camera, you need to radiate your energy through that lens so that when that child is on the other side of that television, you want that child doing this because you want them to feel you.
That's right.
You don't want them to see you, or I'm sorry, you don't want them just to see you or to hear you. You want them to feel you. And so I started trying to help them understand you got to allow God's spirit to flow through you because kids are more connected to God than we are as adults. You got to let God flow through you. Let the God spirit, the spirit of love flow through you consistently. He didn't get that concept.
Mm,
So the ratings started going down. They asked me if I would come back and do like a nationwide campaign to help boost up the rating. And
mm.
and one of the things that at the time I was taking this acting class, and Mr. Richard Lawson was one of my acting teachers. And Richard told me, he says, when you go out and do these appearances, do you have a chance to connect with the people? Do they know it's you? Or do you have to go backstage And I said, no, there's times when I get there early enough that, I can walk through a crowd and nobody knows it's me.
Mhm.
And he says, all right, I want you to do this exercise. Your next live appearance, when you walk through the crowd, just start talking to people. Get to know them as if you were somebody coming there to watch the show also. So then get to ask questions about the family and and how they got there and all these things. So now when you're on stage performing, you're now connecting with a whole different level of connection.
Mhm.
So now you when you're looking out of that costume into the crowd and they have no idea it was you that you were with them, you're now able to see that family. You're able to see what's going on and you now know that story. And so I took that as, wow, that is awesome. So then as I tried to teach that to the Barneys that I they also asked me to teach Barneys in other countries. So I was trying to teach that aspect also. Understand the power of the energy that's going through you and then try to connect on a whole different level with people. So that being said, the production lasted until 2010, I believe. And a lot of it had to do with Cheryl Leach, who was the creator. Um, she sold the show. They
Okay.
sold it to a conglomerate, Hit Entertainment. Uh, so whereas before it was like everybody was invested in the
Mhm.
character, now it's a big organization, and Barney is just one of their properties. Now
Mhm.
you got Barney, Thomas the Tank. I want to say the Wiggles. You had other
Yeah.
children's shows, so Barney wasn't their main focus as it was when we were all that tight knit family.
Small together.
And so you had that aspect come into the play, and then you also had uh, Pixar. Is it Pixar?
Pixar.
The 3D animation?
Yeah, I think that's Pixar. Pixar.
Pixar,
Mhm.
yeah. So you have Pixar coming into play. So now you have this 3D animation that's capturing kids' imagination as they're watching it more so than a costume character.
Mm.
So after a while, the costume character kind of phases out. Now, granted, Sesame Street has still been going on forever, but Sesame Street also has puppeteers.
Mhm.
So you have the puppeteers, and then you also have the live action characters. So there's a different thing, and kids love puppets.
Mhm.
They will always love puppets. And there was even an aspect on some of the seasons where we incorporated some puppets also. But again, Barney's the established character. Uh, Same as Sesame Street, you have Big Bird, but then
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
Oscar, you have Bert and Ernie, you have all these other characters intermingling. So Big Bird wasn't like the main focus, right?
Mhm.
So you had that. And then I think after time, it's just the economy, production, the funding,
Mhm.
and then the competition.
Mhm.
Because also when Barney came out, it was geared toward 2 year olds, and we focused on entertaining 2 year olds.
Okay.
If you were below two and above two, you got along, right? You got on for free. So, and then after 6 or 7, you got off the ride, and Barney wasn't hip anymore.
Right.
Um, so as that then gets to the point where
Mm.
when we started, nobody was out there. Then cut to 10, 15 years later, you got all these shows out here entertaining.
Beating trying to find that same audience.
So a lot of competition came into play.
Wow.
That and the fact that, costumes weren't like the big thing anymore. It was the 3D animation.
Right.
It was the Pixar, all of that stuff. So that's why that's what I believe. I know a lot of people want to try to paint some rumors like Barney got canceled because of this. Barney got canceled because of that.
Okay.
I hear people say Barney got canceled because the guy who was Barney now is a tantric sex therapist, and I'm like, I haven't done Barney since 2001.
Right.
Barney stayed on 2010,
Right.
and I'm not a sex therapist.
Well, so I'm so glad we got you here because I thought you were a sex therapist. No.
I am a spiritual energy healer, tantra massage specialist.
Wow. We gotta. So there's a lot of websites we need to get on and tell them change that verbiage, like like correct that. Okay.
Dude, this all got started when I met this journalist at a
Mhm.
pool party.
Okay.
And I was being introduced as Barney the Tantra Man. because people know that I practice tantra.
Yeah.
It was my business.
Mhm.
So a friend of hers comes up to me and she's been drinking, and she says, "So is it true in tantra a woman can have an orgasm and you're not even touching her?"
Mhm.
I said, "Absolutely." I said, "Because orgasmic energy is on a frequency and a frequency of vibration. If you're harmonizing with someone's vibration, that you don't necessarily need to touch that person to increase the vibration and that frequency. Sexual energy is a frequency that we've been given to allow creation to take place.
Mhm.
So therefore, it's not about the physical, it's about the spiritual." I said, "Yes, you can touch someone without touching them to allow that energy to start flowing."
Mhm.
And so she's like, "Well, how do you do that?" And I said, "Well, let me see your left hand." And so she, gave me her left hand. I said, "All right, number one, our body has a polarity system, just
Mhm.
like a battery, a
Mhm.
negative to positive polarity system. We pull in energy with the left, we radiate the energy with the right. By me now about to move energy in your left hand, it's now going to go inside your system." I said, "But like anything, it has to have the right intent. If I'm just touching you without knowing what I'm doing, nothing's going to happen.
Mm.
If I'm just hovering my hand over your arm and your wrist, nothing's going to happen. I now have to allow energy to flow through my hand, knowing that that energy is moving, and then allow that energy to weave into your spiritual energy." Now, our sexual energy is directly connected to our spiritual energy. When you tap into someone's spirit on a very loving, reverent, respectful way,
Mhm.
it then connects with their kundalini energy that sits at their root chakra.
Mhm.
Just like when you take a straw and you stir any liquid in a glass, that liquid has this vortex energy that starts small, and as it goes up, it increases. So when you tap into someone's spirit in a loving way, it then taps into the energy that created that spirit, right? So your sexual energy is directly connected to your spirit. So when you allow that energy to now increase, it becomes almost like this tornado of energy moving up your system.
Mhm.
And as it starts to move up your system, everything is moving up with it. And then as it's moving up, then your body starts responding to that. And when your body starts responding, that's when you become aroused, and that's when that energy takes place. And that's when it can just go, right? So I'm standing there and I'm working her the left hand, and then everyone standing around could tell she was feeling this energy. And I said, "It's okay, go ahead, go ahead. You can release, you can release." She's like, "No, I can't release. No, I can't." I said, "Go ahead, go ahead." And the next thing you know, she's like, right? And so this journalist, her
Uh-huh.
friend, she's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God."
Uh-huh.
And so then I explained to her how, I incorporate tantric energy being in the costume, because it also allows your energy to
Mhm.
like extend. It allows your loving vibration to
Right.
increase so that
Right.
everything now is radiating through love. It's not just this body and the spirit and this mind now doing this. It's like, no, the spirit of love is constantly flowing and
Wow.
constantly beaming. So if you can imagine a beam that's going around you constantly, and that beam is of love. You're pulling in energy from Mother Earth. You're offering that energy up to God. God's
Right.
giving you that energy back. And now you're just accentuating that energy everywhere you go, right? So she's like, "Well, people need to know this.
Mm.
People need to know the spiritual aspect about Tantra, because everybody thinks Tantra is about sex." I said, "Yeah, and that's what they want you to feel in the States because they know sex sells." I said, "But I was fortunate enough to go to the International Tantric Institute and I studied. And one of the things that we study, there's different classes of Tantra. There's red Tantra, black Tantra, white Tantra.
Okay.
I studied all of those, but my spirit gravitated toward white Tantra. Now, white, or as we call white lotus Tantra, deals with who you are and your awareness, your perception, and your relationship with your spirit. So just like an antenna rising up that's
Mhm.
now being able to connect with the frequency,
Mhm.
you have to now allow your sexual energy to rise up and connect with the frequency that created you. It is not about being with somebody else. It's not about sexual activity with somebody else. It's about understanding the power of your sexual energy. That energy is the energy that creates life. That energy is also the energy of bond. And then the other thing is, from a masculine's point of view, you understand that goddess energy is the greatest energy in the cosmic universe. Because without women, we would not be here. And then the yoni, which is Sanskrit for the magical garden of love and light,
Mhm.
or as we call the vagina,
Mhm.
it is also the portal of life. This is the portal that we come into the world in.
Mhm.
So then, as a masculine energy,
Mm.
you're taught to honor, reverence, and respect the yoni because God has given women the ability and the responsibility to extend life, to extend humanity, to have children. Therefore, when you come in contact with that, you are now coming in contact with the hand of God. So anytime you're with a goddess, know that you're not just with her, you're also with her spirit, and you're also with the woman that God has given the ability to extend humanity. Therefore, you're literally touching the hand of God. So
Mm.
when you understand that in Tantra, then you become aware of that.
Mm.
So she does this interview. I sit down, I'm very candid, very open. We do a whole interview. She then tells me I'm having a hard time finding a buyer for the interview.
Okay.
And And one of the things that I knew is it's too fluffy, it's too soft. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're talking spirit, you're talking light.
Yeah. Yeah.
People don't want it. They don't know that's not
Yeah.
gonna sell. So then she calls me up. She's all excited. She's like, "I found a buyer." And I said, "Oh, who?" Says Vice. Vice?
Mhm.
No, Vice is all about sex. No, we promised that this wasn't going
Mhm.
to be about sex. It's about the spiritual aspect of it. And she's like, "Yeah, well, trust me, they're not going to change it. They're not. It's going to be good. Trust me."
Mhm.
So this article comes out,
Mm.
and I can't remember the whole title of it, but all I remember premise: former Barney David Joyner now runs a tantric sex business, and I remember the backlash from that, and even some of the people that I work with on the show
Yeah.
are like angry at me because they thought I sat down and did this article the way they made
Right.
it. The way they changed it up took a lot of things out of context to make it as clickbait.
Yeah. To make a
And like
shocking,
even
very
yeah,
polarized.
and like even like what I just expressed to you, like the yoni is considered sacred, right? And in the interview, I said, you know how when we say grace and reverence before we eat, because we're asking God to bless the food,
Yeah.
I said, before a man does anything orally to a woman, he should bless. He should ask for thanks
Wow.
because he's literally touching goddess nectar, which is like the most powerful energy in the universe because that's what creation is all about. So when you have that opportunity, you need to give reverence and thanks. And
That's
even
deep.
in that mindset,
That's deep.
you are now not only going into it thinking sexual, you're going into it thinking spiritual. And then the goddess who's receiving is now also thinking spiritual. So
Mm.
sexual energy, like I say, is not about physical gratification. It's about spiritual elevation. So now you're elevating each other's energy, right?
Man.
And he says a prayer before he goes
I was
down.
about to say that's gonna be wild if I pull that move in my relationship. I don't know what she's gonna do. I'm gonna throw her off. If I just start praying, thank you God for this. Yeah, but I understand it though. In closing, they just announced that they're gonna do a live action of Barney. What is your thoughts about that? Are we a part of it? Are we, did you know it was
You mean the
coming?
movie?
Yeah.
The movie? Uh, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful thing to bring back Barney for a new generation, even though it's supposed to be for adults.
Yeah.
Part of it, just to let you know. So I'm curious, as a lot of people are, to see how it's going to go, what direction they're going to take it. Um,
You said you're not part of it. I didn't You say you're not part of it?
no, I'm not part of it. I'm not part of it. I'm not part of it. I put it this way: I have not been contacted
Got you.
to be a part of it. Um,
Understood.
if for some reason I do get contacted to be a part of it, then I'll address that when it comes up, and we'll talk about that. But right now, no, I have not been asked to be a part of it. but I think it's a beautiful thing. Um, the 3D animation show, um, I kind of have my mixed views on that because I see where they're going with the, you know what I'm talking about? The 3D animation?
I was gonna kind of look it up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a new 3D animation. I can't remember what network it's on, but it just came out recently. And uh, you would think because Barney has such an iconic voice that they would try to find a voice actor that would be similar to Barney. Mattel is doing that, uh, but they didn't. So that kind of threw a bunch of people off because
Yeah.
Barney doesn't talk like this now. Barney talks like that.
You talking about Barney's World? Barney's World? Yeah, Mattel and Warner Brothers. This,
Um, and then they changed like the physical dynamic of the character. Uh, so I think it's great that they're bringing it back. I hope it does well, but I'm not sure from my perspective because then again, I right? Uh, it's like as you see behind me, uh, that's what I'm used to seeing. That's the
yeah.
character that embodies my spirit when I think of Barney. And even in this little photo, this is a photo poster from the movie. Um, and even though the movie didn't do very well, it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. My grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid that she's like, "Baby, you're a healer. You're a natural healer. When people come around you, they just feel warm and like they're at home." And she says, "You have the gift of healing to always nurture that gift." So my thing has always been about nurturing that gift. And peace and harmony has always been with me. And I even tell people all the time, they're like, when people ask, other people, do you know your purpose? Do you know what it is that drives you? And I know my purpose in this life. I've been here many times. My purpose in this life is just to share love, to share God given love. And however that comes out, it comes out. And because of that, I think that gives me peace. And then all the things that I've done in my lifetime, I try to equate to pieces of the puzzle. And I try to share with people all the time. If there's anything that you've done in your life that you're not happy with, or that you're embarrassed about, or something that doesn't resonate with your spirit now, don't negate that. Don't throw it away. Don't try to cover it up. Because when you look at your lifespan and every part is a piece to that puzzle. And so then when you look at that puzzle and you see there's some pieces missing, that puzzle can't be completed because you've now negated this. You've now thrown that away. But that very thing that happened in your life elevated you to the next level. That very thing in your life is something that catapulted you to now think a different way or see things a different way, look at things in a different light, appreciate things a little bit better, or let people go out of your life because they're not a part of what you're doing right now or where you're heading. Because we've all had those friends or family members that have kept drawing us and pulling us down. And every time we get back, they're pulling us. And then finally you go, you know what? I gotta love you from a distance because I want to walk and operate in where I'm headed. And like you say, my thing is peace, harmony. I want you to feel it before you hear it. I want it to resonate with your spirit as you're hearing me speak. I don't want you to hear my voice. I want you to feel my spirit. And so that's what I come across as.